Hey everyone, I'm Jacob, my friends call me DeWood, and welcome back to another track breakdown. Today we're going to be looking at Take a Chance, which was the title track on my first EP, and also one of the tracks coming out on the new album very, very soon. As I said in the last video, sort of two different ways that I write. The first one can be a very structured way, which either involves me knowing a bit of a song structure, the type of instruments I want to use, or an experiment that I want to try, basically rolling into the session with a preconceived idea of what I want to get out of it. The other way I can write is with feelings, where I'm just trying to get a feeling out, or I'm trying to express a type of emotion. This track was definitely, again, a feelings-based track. I'm not going to go into the full story, but I actually wrote this track after a really bad day at work. Something had happened with a customer, and it was the first time in a very long time where I felt this extremely icky, disgusting feeling. I'm pretty sure when I got home that day, I just went straight into the studio and I just sat down and I just started playing whatever came to me because I just needed a way to process what happened, I guess purge that feeling and distract myself at the same time. The title, Take a Chance, was never really there until I had written the entire EP and then I was coming up with the concept of the EP. So I found after, this track I started writing in November 2023, and I had been playing and producing music at this point for about a year and a couple of months. We'll call it maybe 14, 15 months. What I found was at the start, I was trying to name all of these ideas and name all of these songs that I was making, even though I would say 95 to 99% of them wouldn't end up being anything. They would just end up being a riff or an idea. And I discovered I was spending a lot of mental energy just coming up with titles of tracks that were never actually going to be tracks. So what I ended up doing was just calling this vocal bend, and it started the trajectory of just naming tracks, random things, and then figuring out the titles later. And so, just because the situation was a really icky, disgusting thing, it definitely didn't mean take a chance or anything like that. The concept and idea of taking a chance was reflecting me and my musical journey, stopping the business and starting this and taking a chance on myself, in the music industry. So, and hence the door leading into the galaxy, and it's like opening the door of possibilities. That was sort of the concept of what I was writing for the EP. But this track itself, the reason it actually came about was me just trying to purge this icky, awkward, disgusting feeling that I had in my body when I came home from work after a really, really horrible day and a really, really horrible interaction. I guess in terms of inspiration, this track really pulled a lot of inspiration from the progressive rock that I listened to in my teenage years. I was a massive fan of Tool. It's one of my favorite bands growing up in the 90s, and Deftones and Porcupine Tree, Steven Wilson. Going back further, you could look at King Crimson, those types of bands. I was very heavily inspired with progressive rock with my drumming and back when I was playing in a band. The thing for me is I've always enjoyed that fusion of acoustic and electronic. So at this point, I think I was really trying to head towards that synth-rock crossover where I had elements of, live drums, which I recorded on the drum kit, or, pianos and things like that in the background, but then a very, very heavy synth electronic feel to it as well. And in terms of song structure, again, I'm not a huge fan of making beats or making sort of club tracks and bangers, if that makes sense. I was looking at sort of music that takes listeners on a journey, music that can take you from point A to point B and kind of experience a bit of a roller coaster and a ride along the way. And I think this track was one of the first tracks I wrote which really honed in on that sound and really let me explore that sort of, again, that crossover of synth rock. With all that being said, let's jump into the demo and I'll show you what we started with and then from there, where we took the track. All right, so this is the first demo, the first idea that we had. I reckon this was saved after maybe 2 or 3 sessions. And created November 2023 to give you an idea. So this is how it started. So again, when I'm writing, I'm usually starting the track from the start. I'm not creating other sections first and then figuring out how to get there. I'm setting the space. So I remember starting with the vocal bend as well. Literally, the arps, arpeggiators, and the vocal bend. Simple drum. So I'm just using a couple of loops. Bass line. I think where we got up to was so you can hear like the idea is there, it just needs to be fleshed out, and I didn't know where to take the song. So I think I was saving at this point here, scratching my head going, where do I move the track? So definitely was not written all in one session, I can definitely guarantee that. All right, so let's have a quick look at what we've done here. We'll start with the arpeggiators. Now, what I'm actually using is two separate arpeggiators. And again, using the Analog Lab V things from Arturia. First arpeggiator. So this is a virtual version of this synth, which was done by the Arturia company. What they've done is they've grabbed a whole bunch of like OG old school synths and then just like computer versioned them, if that makes sense. You can tell from the star I've done something to these settings, but I'm going to be honest with you, these types of machines I am not very familiar or good with. And I think a lot of the editing was just really to do with things like the brightness, the movement, the time. And this is actually the same synth that I'm using when I'm playing this live as well. And then the second, you can hear this one in there too. Now, I've actually slapped a lot of effects on here as well. So you can hear that there is a saturator, and with the guitar rig, all I'm using on the guitar rig is this sort of twin delay. So if I take off the delay, the saturator, there's still a very subtle delay in there, but with it on, it's just creating so much more chaos. Saturator in there. Now the filter is actually, it's a low pass filter turned completely up. But what I've done is I've got some automation to turn this down right before the, I guess, initial drop. So with the automation here, this one's coming up while the other one's pulling down. Bam, drop. I'll have a look at the vocals. So I call it vocal bend. What I actually used, again, you can tell I just bought the Arturia bundle just before I wrote this. This was an augmented voices synth. I think it's just a granular synth using, you know, actual real voices. So, and then what I've done is just vocal bend. in the original, it wasn't until I went back and redid this that I actually thickened this sound up and put more layers on here with panning and spaces, which we'll look at in the full version. So again, track just started, and I literally just started with probably these two parts here. And you can see down the bottom, the vocal, the pitch bending. All right, so like I said, when I'm writing, I don't focus too much on building a whole drum kit, building all of the rhythmical sounds, because I find it takes a long time to get everything on a drum kit right electronically. And I think part of the reason I think that way is because I am a drummer originally, and for me to just sit down on an acoustic kit and play what I hear in my head is very, very easy for me. So it's very frustrating to jump down onto a computer and then try and recreate the things that I'm hearing in my head. So what I'm doing is I'm just laying down fundamental rhythmic ideas that will then help me write the melodies and write the song structure so that I can complete the song. And then once the song is completed, I can then go back and spend the time on the drums. I think it's sort of when I'm in the creative flow and the creative focus, the last thing I want to be doing is sort of wasting that, I don't know what it's called, the creative juices. It's like wasting the creative juices on building a drum kit and building out and finding all of the different sounds that I want to use in a kit. Unless the track is built from the rhythms to start with. There are tracks where I've started where I've used live samples and things like that, which will go into on different track breakdowns. But for a track like this, I just want to get something out as quick as possible that's going to work with the song and not work against the song, which will then help me create the melodic ideas further. It's very hard to, I guess, write a track like this. If you think about it, if we do everything except the drums, go from here. Writing this without any kind of rhythm is very hard, in my opinion. So I just want to have something. Once I've got that thing down, then it's easier to go back and actually write the melodies. So what I started with was literally just 2 loops. So what I've started with is 2 groups, but I've actually high passed it out and cut out the low end so you can't really hear the kick. If I take this filter off, the kick comes back. So I just wanted the top end snare and ride and hats in there. I think my plan already was to kind of not use that, but just use the vibe of it and then build something underneath it. All right, let's open up the vinyl. Going back to like the inspirations or the, progressive rock influences from this, there was something I read in like a magazine years ago, and it was like an interview with some of the guys from Tool. And they were talking about starting with a very, very simple idea, expanding on that idea until there was something, and then retracting that idea back to being simple. And I think that is kind of how I started viewing this track. I had a very, very simple idea. It was the vocal bend with the arps. And then I created that melody. And then from there, I wanted to build it into a climax, which you can literally see, climax. And then post-climax, bring it back to a simple idea to finish the track. And so that's kind of how I decided to structure this song. Let's have a look at some different parts, right? So with the drums. Now, if you look at just the live drums, the live drums were recorded on a Roland TD-17 drum kit. I connected the MIDI into the Maschine and recorded on, I believe it was a Contact drum kit. We're using this Abbey Road 80s drummer drum kit. This here is the drum beat. So if we just play the first bridge, And I remember there being a bit of a, like I still haven't figured out how to actually set up the kit properly. So when I was playing, there was a bit of a lag time between what I was playing and then it registering in the DAW. So I had to go back and actually individually kind of like make things work and sort of quantize it a little bit, which kind of annoyed me, but hey, the power of MIDI, right? All right, so just the drums without any of the other layers. Now this layer here, I just wanted to add some extra rides and hi-hats in there to thicken out the sound. And then we add in the loops. And now it sounds full. I think what I've done is I've just mixed the other layers down a lot and then just kind of kept the live drums shining through. Vocal bend. Now you can see what I've done is I've got 3 separate sounds creating this. We have the original augmented voices. So what have I used? There's, on top of the augmented voices, I used Firelight. And then this one's panned all the way to the left. Had another one panned all the way to the right. Together. Throughout the whole track, we've kept the arpeggiators playing, and all I'm doing in the verses is just lowering the cutoffs to make them less intense. All right, to get the bass tone, I've actually got, as you can see, 4 different basses that we've used. We have a clean low end. Heavy is used as well throughout, which gives it that top end sort of growl. And what I'm doing is changing the brightness to get that growl go up or down. So if I'm just using and then we have a very, very sort of much heavier, which comes in, much heavier bass, which comes in, you know, at the first bridge here. As you can see, I've also chucked saturators on pretty much all of the basses, and then I've just used FabFilter to EQ them. And again, all just using presets from Arturia, Analog Lab, finding different basses that work. This one here is the Tauren, for example. There are other sounds that I've used in the verses and the bridges to kind of, again, thicken it out and add more layers to the song. So if I just have the chords, which is the arpeggiators, and then on top of that, I have these mallets and piano that are playing different sections. Fading in. It's got a fair bit of delay on the mallets, which gives it that, gives it some rhythm. I'm just using a normal piano there. So to create the melody, what I've actually done is I've stacked 2 plucks at a different octave, which is my low pluck and my high pluck. And then I've got this evolving lead. So when you stack them together, and then what I've also done sort of after writing the rough draft is adding in just another synth. Again, just more air, more space, more sound to create that feeling. If we add in the arpeggiators. It's funny because what I've actually done is I've made the melody follow the bass line, or the bass line follow the melody. I think that was part of my way of drawing from simple idea, expanding, bringing it back to simple. It was by recycling the same melodies, but using different instruments to portray that melody. So you can hear, like, I definitely had the ideas to start with, but I did not know where to take it. And I think writing this climactic section here was the key that allowed me to finish the track. Where a track dies, in my opinion, is when you've written up to a certain point and you don't know where to take it from there. And every idea that you try sounds similar to what you've already written, or it doesn't sound like it's going anywhere. One thing that separates my finished tracks from all my demos, or my finished tracks from my ideas, is sort of there's a moment when you cross the bridge from this is a simple idea and it's just a repeatable loop to I now have a storyline for the song and I have a place for the song to go. And usually for me that is either building a climactic section like this one here, like this to me is the pinnacle of the song. And then once we pass this section here and we go to the next part, it starts to retract from that. It starts to retract from that big idea and then go into the outro section. So, you know, you can see in the first track, I'd pretty much written up to here. And I didn't know where to take it, but it was writing that. Where does this go to next? Writing that allowed me to then unlock the door to get into the outro. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you're enjoying the content and the track breakdowns. We are going to be dropping a new single on the 3rd of July. This is called Simplicated, and it's going to be the last track before the album drops. The next track breakdown, we're going to be looking at the new single Simplicated. I hope you guys are enjoying the content. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment with what you're enjoying and what you want to see. But otherwise, I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.